She wasn't the first woman to be misunderstood by Hollywood, but perhaps the one who made it afraid of beauty itself. Meg Foster, the woman with the icy blue eyes that once stunned the camera, was hailed as having a gaze that could pierce the soul. And yet, that very world that once worshipped her would later turn its back on her, simply because she was too different. Those eyes that captivated millions of viewers also made many producers uneasy. They said she was cold, distant, even not feminine enough to fit the mold of a TV leading lady. And after only 6 episodes of Cagney and Lacey, the name Meg Foster vanished from the spotlight, as if Hollywood had never known a woman like her. Why was she feared and cast aside? What really happened to the woman whose eyes once made Hollywood look away? And why, after all these years, does that gaze still send shivers down the spine of anyone who remembers it? Meg Foster was born on May 10, 1948, in Reading, Pennsylvania, the third of 5 children in a close-knit Catholic family. Her childhood unfolded in Rowayton, a small seaside town in Connecticut, a place where long winters and mist-covered streets seemed to carry a quiet, nameless sadness. From a young age, Meg was different. Her pale blue eyes were so light that people couldn't even agree on their true color. Some said gray, others said icy blue, while the neighborhood children whispered and called her the girl with ghost eyes. Whenever she looked directly at someone, they would freeze. Not out of fear, but because they didn't know how to meet such a gaze. For a child, that was a heavy burden. Meg learned to avoid eye contact, learned to stay silent so she wouldn't draw attention. But that silence only made her seem even more distant. She grew up in a kind but reserved family, where emotions were rarely spoken aloud. Her parents went to church every Sunday, her siblings were close, yet Meg often felt like an observer standing outside the frame, watching life rather than truly living in it. At school, she had few friends. Children whispered that if you looked into her eyes too long, you'd dream of strange things. Meg never denied it. She would simply smile faintly and step back into the shadows. After graduating high school, she left Connecticut to study at the neighborhood Playhouse School of the Theater in New York, the same institution that had trained Gregory Peck, Steve McQueen, and Diane Keaton. For the first time in her life, she was seen not as an oddity, but as a person. Her teachers recognized in her a rare kind of energy, a presence that could make a room hold its breath. In later interviews, Meg said that acting, for her, was never a path to fame, but a search for truth, a way to exist fully in every moment. In New York, she didn't learn to become a star. She learned to become herself, a girl once feared for her eyes, now learning to turn them into the voice of her soul. In the late 1960s, Meg Foster left her small seaside town for New York, the city of dreams, where everyone seemed to be chasing fame. But fame was never what she sought. All she wanted was a place where she could live truthfully in every moment. Ironically, that honesty made her stand out from the very first time she stepped on stage. While her classmates practiced their lines and gestures with hopes of being noticed, Meg chose silence. At the neighborhood Playhouse School of the Theater, she learned to stand still at center stage and let her eyes do the speaking. Her instructors remembered her as quiet, almost distant. Yet every time she appeared in rehearsal, the entire room went still. Not because she was perfect, but because there was something hauntingly present about her, something that couldn't be explained. She began her career in small New York theater groups, where the cold backstage air and the scent of stage dust were the only things keeping her there. Those early performances had no bright lights, only a few dozen silent spectators, but Meg always performed as if the whole world were watching. Her eyes, gray-blue, deep, almost translucent, held the audience captive. One director once said, "She doesn't need dialogue. Her eyes tell the whole story." From the stage, Meg gradually moved into television, taking small guest roles in Bonanza, The Twilight Zone, and Hawaii Five-0. Modest opportunities, yet enough for people to realize she was unlike anyone else. While other actresses tried to appear charming, Meg chose stillness, letting her gaze and silence do the work. By the late 1970s, she began her true Hollywood journey. But like every unconventional star, her path was not one of easy victories. It was a trail marked by bold choices, the kind that could either amaze or unsettle people. Her first major turning point came with A Different Story, 1978, a film that dared to explore homosexuality, a nearly taboo subject in Hollywood at the time. Meg played a strong, independent lesbian woman who lives with a gay man. The two eventually fall in love, marry, and have a child. The film instantly sparked controversy. The LGBTQ+ community criticized its narrative for suggesting that homosexuality could be cured, an offensive and dangerous notion. Yet amid the backlash, Meg's performance was praised. Critics called her the only soul that gives the film depth, highlighting her portrayal of a woman torn between love, freedom, and the invisible rules that society imposed on gender and emotion. Meg knew the role would make her unpopular, and it did. After the film, she was quietly labeled difficult to work with by several producers. But she felt no regret. "I just want to tell stories that feel true, even if they make people uncomfortable," she said in a rare interview. A Different Story did not bring her fame, but it proved something greater, that Meg Foster was never meant to be a commercial actress. She was willing to walk into the gray areas of morality, identity, and feeling, the places most of Hollywood feared to touch. Just 1 year after the controversy surrounding A Different Story, Meg Foster made a decisive leap in her career when she was cast as Hester Prynne in The Scarlet Letter, a television miniseries produced by WGBH, adapted from Nathaniel Hawthorne's classic novel. In the original story, Hester is a colonial American woman condemned for adultery and forced to wear a scarlet letter A on her chest for life, a public mark of shame. Scorned by her community and living in complete isolation, she nonetheless retains her dignity and strength in defiance of judgment. Choosing Meg Foster for this role was no accident. She was not a sweet or instantly likable actress, but she possessed an unmistakable emotional depth and a natural sense of detachment. That made her a perfect fit for a Hester Prynne who refused to compromise. Foster brought to the character a quiet but taut intensity. Her cold gaze, low voice, and deliberate pacing didn't evoke pity. They conveyed conscious endurance, a kind of silent rebellion. Critics praised how she portrayed social isolation without turning Hester into a victim. Instead, Foster's Hester was calm, unyielding, and strong enough to transform punishment into a symbol of self-respect. It was one of the few roles in which Meg Foster was not misunderstood. Its message was too clear, its theme too honest. Gone were the political or gender debates. As Hester Prynne, Foster was recognized purely for her craft, sharp, restrained, but powerful. Many critics at the time said she had created a Hester more real than the one in literature. The role didn't take her to any award stages, but it firmly established Meg Foster as a serious actress, one who didn't need spectacle or special effects to express tragedy. All she needed were her eyes and her silence. And in an industry growing ever louder, that made her truly distinct. For a moment, people believed Meg Foster was on her way to becoming a household name in America. But the path she chose would prove anything but predictable. More than her acting, what set Meg Foster apart were her eyes, that icy gray blue, almost translucent. Directors called them crystalline, frozen, even inhuman. Her gaze was so striking that casting directors didn't know what to do with her. Too unusual for a romantic lead, too intense for the girl next door type. Yet that very strangeness made her the perfect choice for dark, mysterious, and unconventional roles. She once said she hated being told what to do with her face, hated hiding behind heavy makeup or being turned into something artificial. "I just want to be real and raw." In a Hollywood obsessed with conformity, that made her a quiet rebel. No grand gestures, no declarations. Meg simply stood there, eyes unyielding, defying the norms of an entire industry. She didn't yet realize that this, her truthfulness, her candor, and that gaze that refused to soften, would one day make Hollywood turn away. But at that moment, in those early roles, Meg Foster still believed that if she acted with complete sincerity, the audience would see what she meant. And for a fleeting instant, a light of hope seemed to pierce through the cold mist of her life. By the 1980s, Meg Foster was no longer an unfamiliar face in the film industry, yet she remained something of a mystery to Hollywood. While other actresses of her generation gravitated toward romantic comedies or light dramas, Foster was drawn, or perhaps chosen by a darker world of cinema, intense, layered, and psychologically complex. She never deliberately sought out strange roles. They found her. Her eyes, it seemed, were born to live in the liminal space between the human and the undefinable. In 1981, Meg appeared in the Canadian drama Ticket to Heaven, a film that explored the disturbing themes of cults and mind control. It followed David, played by Nick Mancuso, a young man lured into a seemingly peaceful religious community that slowly strips him of independent thought, convincing him he has achieved enlightenment. Foster played a mysterious woman within the group, neither its leader nor its mastermind, yet essential to its manipulative machinery. She didn't shout, threaten, or dominate. Instead, her character operated as a soft but critical link in the cult's system of control, gentle, persuasive, non-threatening, and all the more dangerous for it. Her performance avoided theatrics. It was calm, measured, unsettling. She didn't portray a traditional villain. She embodied something far more chilling: quiet conviction. The more one watched her, the more one realized how control could live in a smile, a tone of voice, a glance. That subtle mastery earned her a Genie Award nomination, Canada's highest film honor, for Best Foreign Actress. It was the first time Foster received formal recognition from an international film institution, a milestone that proved her magnetism didn't depend on being at the center of the frame. She could dominate a scene through silence, through the unreadable language of her gaze. In 1982, after nearly a decade drifting between theater, independent films, and art house projects, Meg Foster finally stood at the threshold every television actor dreamed of: the lead role in CBS's primetime drama, Cagney and Lacey. At that time, American television was still ruled by male heroes, strong, stoic saviors who solved the world's problems one episode at a time. Women, when present, were often confined to the roles of wives, lovers, or gentle colleagues in the background. Cagney and Lacey shattered that pattern, a groundbreaking procedural focused on two intelligent, conflicted, and fiercely independent female detectives. It was a golden opportunity, not just for Foster, but for every woman in Hollywood who longed to break free from the beautiful and obedient archetype. When Loretta Swit, who had starred in the pilot episode, stepped away, CBS began searching for someone sharp, cool, and grounded enough to make audiences believe this was a real cop, not an actress pretending to be one. They found Meg Foster. From the very first table read, The room fell silent. Foster didn't act with her voice. She acted with her eyes. A direct gaze, neither yielding nor sweet, but weighted and commanding. Producer Barney Rosenzweig later recalled, "When Meg looks at you, you can't lie. She has an energy that makes people stay honest." Across the first 6 episodes, Meg Foster's portrayal of Christine Cagney shook American television. She didn't flash polite smiles, didn't wear heavy lipstick, didn't flirt when she got hurt. She moved like someone who had lived the rough streets and knew that out there, survival came only from grit. Female viewers wrote to the network saying they saw themselves in Cagney. Not perfect, not gentle, but real. Critics at the Los Angeles Times noted, "Meg Foster did something television had never seen. She didn't try to prove women were strong. She simply was." And TV Guide described her as an admirable cold front, distinctive, dangerous, liberating. But at the same time, CBS began to worry. In internal meetings, executives voiced concerns that Foster's character might make viewers uncomfortable. They said her eyes were too cold, her posture too rigid, and worst of all, she lacked femininity. A leaked memo would later reveal the truth in blunt words. "We need a Cagney the audience wants to have a drink with, not someone they'd be afraid to stand next to." Beneath the polite phrasing was a deeper fear. The fear of a woman who didn't need to please men. Some executives even fretted that Foster's portrayal might lead viewers to mistake the character for being gay, a subject still taboo on national television at the time. After only 6 episodes, Foster was replaced. No scandal, no public dispute, just a cold phone call from CBS saying they were taking the show in a new direction. The role of Christine Cagney went to Sharon Gless, friendlier, warmer, and, as they put it, more relatable to mainstream audiences. The transition happened quietly, but it was a shock. Major papers reported it. Fans wrote letters in protest, many saying they felt betrayed. One letter to TV Guide read, "Meg Foster made me believe women could be cops. Sharon Gless makes me believe they're just auditioning." CBS never reversed its decision. Cagney and Lacey went on to become one of the most successful police dramas of the 1980s, winning multiple awards, including Emmys for Sharon Gless and Tyne Daly, and Meg Foster, the woman who had paved the way, who had given that image its first breath, was erased from the collective memory. No one spoke up for her. No one defended her. Years later, when asked in an interview about being replaced, she simply smiled and said, "They told me I was too strong. Maybe they were right. I don't know how to be weaker." After Cagney and Lacey, the major film offers slowed. Yet for those who had seen those brief 6 episodes, Meg Foster remained the true Christine Cagney, the first woman who dared to step into a man's world and make it unforgettable, and the first to be punished for it. Being removed from Cagney and Lacey didn't make Meg Foster walk away from cinema. On the contrary, during the 1980s, as Hollywood entered its era of thrillers, sci-fi, and action blockbusters, Foster returned with a series of villainous roles that would become iconic. In 1983, she appeared in The Osterman Weekend, a spy thriller directed by Sam Peckinpah and based on Robert Ludlum's novel. Foster played Lee Osterman, a calm-seeming wife simmering with suspicion and psychological tension. Though not the central figure, she left an indelible mark with her glacial eyes and her ability to express distrust without long lines or loud gestures. The film wasn't a major commercial hit, but it marked Foster's return in the type of role that fit her perfectly. Introspective, ambiguous, and charged with an unspoken sense that something dangerous was always hidden beneath the surface. Then came 1985 and The Emerald Forest, directed by John Boorman, a deeply human story about a boy lost in the Amazon. Foster played his mother, and it wasn't just another role, it was a test of her raw ability. Surrounded by the vastness of the wild, she relied not on tears or words, but on silence and presence. Every glance, every breath carried the primal ache of a mother's grief. Critics were stunned. One review described her as a woman who could make the jungle itself fall silent to listen. Variety praised her performance as acting through the eyes, through breath, through unspoken pain, one of the truest portrayals of motherhood the 1980s ever saw. The film was an artistic triumph, and for the first time, Meg Foster's name appeared alongside the era's leading stars. 2 years later, in 1987, she transformed again, this time into pure power. She appeared in Masters of the Universe, the film adaptation of the He-Man franchise, produced by Canon Films. No longer the gentle mother, Foster became evil-lyn, a commanding, dangerous sorceress. Beneath the silver armor and metallic makeup, she didn't need to shout to assert dominance. She only needed to look. Her eyes, reflecting the studio lights, made even Skeletor, the main villain, seem small. Film magazines dubbed her the Dark Goddess of the 80s, and director Gary Goddard later admitted, "We cast Meg Foster because her gaze could control an entire room. She didn't play evil-lyn, she was evil-lyn." The film would go on to become a cult phenomenon, and Meg's image in that violet armor remains one of the defining visual icons of 1980s fantasy cinema. But Meg Foster's true pinnacle came in 1988 with John Carpenter's They Live, directed by the man behind Halloween and The Thing. It wasn't a blockbuster, but a sharp, subversive film about a society manipulated by mass media. In it, Meg played Holly Thompson, a woman who was at once victim, mystery, and threat. From her very first scene, the audience couldn't quite read her. Good or evil, sincere or deceptive. John Carpenter once said, "No one else could have done what Meg did. She can make you believe she's telling the truth, and at the same time, make you doubt everything." They Live earned only modest box office returns at first, but it later became a cult classic, influencing cinema and pop culture alike. From MTV visuals and fashion to rock music videos of the 1990s. And in every retrospective on the film, Meg Foster's name appears first, the mysterious soul that keeps the story alive. Critic Richard Schickel of Time wrote, "When she looks straight into the camera, the audience isn't watching a movie anymore, and they're being hypnotized." In the years that followed, Meg appeared in Leviathan, 1989, Stepfather II, 1989, Blind Fury, 1989, and a string of popular television projects. Even when she wasn't the lead, her presence altered the rhythm of a scene, as if she carried a different kind of energy, a different layer of reality. Many directors called her the silent catalyst, someone who could turn an ordinary moment into something unforgettable with just a glance. Though she never won major awards for these roles, critics continued to speak of her as a cinematic anomaly. An actress who doesn't need trophies to prove her gravity, a woman who can turn a supporting role into the center of gravity with her gaze. Filmmakers sought her out not for box office appeal, but because they needed that unique energy, cold, still, enigmatic, and impossible to replicate. In a decade that produced countless iconic villains, Meg Foster never tried to stand out. Yet she became one of the few who remained etched in memory. Because every character she played left audiences with the haunting feeling that something about her was still left unsolved. Behind the icy characters and the gaze that made Hollywood uneasy, Meg Foster in real life was almost the opposite. Calm, sincere, and unguarded, except for her silence. She never belonged to the world of parties, ball gowns, or glittering premieres. While her peers smiled for cameras on red carpets, Meg preferred to stay home, reading or walking by the ocean with her hair loose and face bare. Someone once said, "She's the only movie star who doesn't care whether she looks like one." But that very simplicity made her increasingly isolated in Hollywood. In a world fueled by attention, a woman who doesn't seek it is essentially unplugging herself from the stage. After being replaced in Cagney and Lacey, Meg became what the press called a familiar stranger. Everyone knew her name, but few truly knew who she was. Some magazines described her as cold, but those who had worked with her told another story. She's gentle, but she always keeps a safe distance, as if she's long since learned what hurt feels like. Her personal life was quiet, but complex. No scandals, no self-promotion, no media performances. Her private world existed as a separate dimension from her career. Yet beneath that silence were difficult choices, broken ties, and a woman who refused to fit any traditional mold. Before her only marriage, Meg Foster had a deep relationship with actor Ron Starr. It never led to marriage, but it left a lasting mark. The two had a son together, Christopher Starr. Having a child out of wedlock, especially at a time when single motherhood was still stigmatized, was an act of defiance. Foster never justified or defended her choice publicly. She simply lived it. She stayed silent and did the work of a mother. Christopher wasn't just an unconventional presence in Meg's life. He became her quiet companion on screen. In 1983, the two appeared together in Sam Peckinpah's The Osterman Weekend, with Christopher playing the son of the character portrayed by his real-life mother. It was one of the rare times Foster allowed her personal life to intersect with her art, discreetly but symbolically. As for Ron Starr, little is publicly known about whether he remained in touch with his son after parting ways with Meg. Christopher was largely raised by his mother, and true to form, Foster carried that responsibility quietly. She never used her role as a single mother as a badge of sacrifice or sympathy. She simply lived it, privately and steadfastly. A few years later, Meg married Canadian actor Stephen McHattie, a quiet, introspective performer who shared her love for theater. They lived for a time in California during the 1970s, in a small house filled with books, vinyl records, and stage scripts. Their love began from understanding, two kindred spirits who knew what it meant to feel misplaced in a noisy world. But marriage couldn't save two people, both searching for silence. As McHattie's career began to rise, and Meg struggled with the feeling of being overlooked, the space between them widened. They separated quietly. No scandal, no anger. A close friend recalled, "They just sat across from each other, not saying a word." She smiled. He nodded. They both knew. Some people are meant to walk together for a while, not for a lifetime. After that separation, Meg Foster never sought anyone else. She chose silence. She chose solitude, as if wanting to spend the rest of her life listening to the tired rhythm of her own soul. Throughout her life, Meg Foster kept her private world far from the lights. But that very choice, unbound, unapologetic, unembellished, made her personal story all the more layered. A woman who chose to be a mother outside marriage, chose to withdraw after divorce, and chose to quietly own every decision she made. In a world where privacy had become rare, her silence itself was a declaration of identity. Meg Foster once possessed a beauty so unusual it felt almost unreal. Misty pale blue eyes, luminous fair skin, and a low, husky yet sensual voice, one unlike any other in an industry filled with bright, polished female tones. Filmmakers called her voice a hidden weapon. No need to shout or perform. When she spoke, the entire atmosphere of a scene could shift. But that weapon slowly faded, not because of time, but because of a habit Foster later admitted she couldn't control: cigarettes. In later interviews, Meg didn't hide it. She spoke openly, saying she had been a heavy smoker, not out of stress, but because it helped her keep the silence inside from getting too loud. But the cost was irreversible. The once radiant skin, praised for its natural makeup-free glow, began to dull and age faster than her years. The wrinkles didn't just appear, they deepened, carving a harder, rougher expression, a look that no longer fit Hollywood's ruthless standards of youth and beauty. Worse still, her signature voice, the deep, magnetic tone that audiences remembered long after the credits, began to change. It grew hoarse, lost its elasticity, sometimes breaking mid-sentence like an old melody running out of breath. In an industry where every breath and every line could be scrutinized under a magnifying lens, that was a genuine loss. Meg Foster never made excuses. She didn't blame pressure or roles. She simply admitted, plainly and without drama, that it was her choice. And everyone has to live with the consequences of what they can't give up. It was a raw truth, unadorned. And it revealed once more what she had always been. Not an actress trying to protect her image, but a woman willing to accept the cost. In art and in life. Even if that meant sacrificing part of her voice, her face, and perhaps her future in the industry. Meg Foster's private life remained discreet, yet intricate. And that complexity wasn't only reflected in her relationships or family. It was woven into the very roles she chose and the genres she deliberately avoided. Throughout her entire career, Foster appeared in almost no comedies, a rare choice for a woman who spent decades in Hollywood. As her career declined, Meg Foster's life grew so quiet that many assumed she had retired completely. But in truth, she never stopped working. She just stopped working where the lights were brightest. She appeared in independent projects, low-budget films, places where no one demanded perfection, only honesty. That was where she truly belonged. Most of her time, however, she devoted to the theater, where the dim yellow lights and the sparse applause felt more genuine than any red carpet premiere in Los Angeles. From time to time, Meg shared strange, almost mystical stories. In an interview with young journalist Elliot Fulham, she spoke of once dreaming about aliens, of feeling spirits in her old California home. The stories sounded uncanny, yet the way she told them was calm, almost serene. Not to attract attention, but because she genuinely believed another world might exist beside ours. She said, "I'm not afraid of the dark. I think there are kind spirits around us just to make sure we're not alone." Perhaps that was her way of finding comfort, by believing that loneliness was not an emptiness, but the silent presence of things unseen. Friends described Meg as difficult to approach, but to those patient enough to stay, she revealed a tenderness that made people want to protect her. One actress once said, "She doesn't need help, but she makes you want to help her. She doesn't cry, but she makes you want to cry for her." Hollywood forgot Meg Foster, but she never turned bitter. She never lashed out, never complained, never wrote a memoir to recount her injustices. When asked why she never spoke up, she simply smiled. "Because I already said it all with my eyes. Whether people choose to hear it or not, that's up to them." And perhaps Meg Foster's greatest tragedy wasn't being cast aside. It was staying loyal to herself in a world where pretense is always loved more than truth. Alone, misunderstood, but never stripped of dignity. Meg Foster chose to stand at the edge of Hollywood's blinding lights, in the shadows, where she could see everything more clearly than anyone else. Time may fade a name, but it can never erase a presence. In Meg Foster's case, what remains is not fame, but a feeling, a rare, almost indefinable sensation. Every time she appeared on screen, even for a few seconds, the atmosphere shifted. Things grew stiller, colder, deeper. The audience stopped watching the scene, they looked through it. That is the kind of legacy no acting school can teach. Meg Foster never needed the audience to love her, only to feel her. Though forgotten by Hollywood, critics and younger filmmakers continue to refer to her as a face that doesn't belong to this world. Sight and Sound once wrote, "Meg Foster proves that presence can be more powerful than dialogue. She doesn't need words to act. Her silence alone makes you feel exposed." At one point, producers even asked her to wear contact lenses during filming because her real eyes were too distracting. And yet those very eyes, over the decades, became one of the most haunting images in the memory of fantasy and sci-fi lovers. She was never a conventional star, but she was the kind of face you recognize even when you can't remember the name. Independent directors of the 1990s and 2000s embraced her as an underground icon, the actress who refused to compromise, unafraid to look imperfect, to be real, to preserve her wild, unfiltered energy. Films like They Live, 1988, The Emerald Forest, 1985, and Leviathan, 1989, have since been rediscovered and reanalyzed by a new generation, celebrated not only for their nostalgia, but for portraying women who were not defined by men. A female film student once wrote in her thesis, "When I look at Meg Foster, I realize femininity isn't softness. It's deliberate silence. She doesn't need to prove she's strong. She just stands there and the world trembles. Her refusal to conform to beauty standards, no surgery, no sculpted perfection, no docile femininity, became a quiet act of rebellion, decades before the Me Too movement." Meg Foster never declared herself a feminist icon. She lived like one. While others chased youth with the surgeon's blade, she chose to age honestly. And that honesty has given her image a second life in the 21st century. On social media, short clips from They Live and Cagney and Lacey still circulate, accompanied by reverent comments. "She's not acting, she's just being," and that's enough to make the whole frame tremble. Modern filmmakers, from Lana Wachowski to Denis Villeneuve, have mentioned her among faces you can't forget. Some fans even call her eyes the original sci-fi gaze, a beauty so otherworldly it seems born to exist between human and inhuman. No Oscar statue, no star on the Walk of Fame. Yet in the hearts of true film lovers, Meg Foster stands as proof of a simple truth that few dare to live by. Sometimes, to be truly remembered, you have to be willing to disappear. And when people look back at those old reels and see that cold blue gaze still cutting through time, they realize she never really disappeared at all. In her 70s now, Meg Foster no longer appears often on screen. But every time she does, audiences still pause for a moment, as if seeing something both familiar and distant. Her face no longer glows with the sharp light of youth. Her blue eyes have grown cloudier, slower, yet they still hold that strange magnetic energy, both warm and unsettling, as if light and darkness coexist in the same gaze. She lives simply in California, far from the noise of Hollywood. No social media, no red carpets, no concern for how much she's remembered. Her life now revolves around nature, books, music, and the few close friends who've stayed by her side since her early days. Independent filmmakers occasionally invite her to take part in small projects, quiet, emotional supporting roles, and she accepts, not for money, but because her love for the craft has never faded. When she appeared in Rob Zombie's The Lords of Salem, 2012, and Jeepers Creepers 3, 2017, audiences were astonished. Meg Foster was still there, with the same haunting eyes, only now softened by the shadow of time. Those roles didn't bring her back to Hollywood fame, but they brought her back to those who had always loved the truth in her eyes. In rare interviews, she speaks of aging with calm acceptance, as if she's already made peace with everything. "I'm not afraid of time. It's the only thing that's still real." She never fought aging with surgery, never tried to look young enough for the camera again. Instead, she kept her wrinkles, her smoke-lined voice, the marks of a life fully lived. "I used to think I had to be perfect to be loved," she once said. "Then I realized what people remember you for isn't perfection. It's the scars." Her home is surrounded by trees and soft golden light in the late afternoons. Neighbors say they sometimes see her reading on the porch, occasionally speaking to someone unseen, as if conversing with old memories. One close friend said, "Meg doesn't live in the past, but the past lives in her. Every look she gives carries a story that was never fully told." Hollywood may have forgotten her name on the marquees, but cinema never forgets people like Meg Foster. Anyone who has once seen those eyes, whether in They Live, The Emerald Forest, or Cagney and Lacey, can still recognize them anywhere, even when time has blurred everything else. And perhaps that is the most beautiful form of existence an artist can hope for. Not fame, not noise, but the quiet legacy of a gaze that no one can forget. Meg Foster is no longer a star. She is a memory. A memory that needs no light to continue shining in the minds of those who once saw her. Meg Foster was never just a misunderstood actress. She became a symbol of unconventional beauty, of the quiet pride that comes from living truthfully in a world built on facades. She never tried to please anyone, never chased the spotlight. From the moment Hollywood turned its back on her to the years she faded into silence, Meg Foster kept that same translucent gaze. A light both beautiful and painful, so real it could make you shiver. Perhaps what frightened people about her wasn't her eyes, but the naked honesty within them. A kind of truth the entertainment world always tries to hide. Now, with time having washed everything else away, what remains isn't a list of roles, but a feeling. The feeling of a woman who walked through loneliness without ever losing herself. Meg Foster chose the road no one else dared to take, and for that, she became someone time could never replicate. Behind those seemingly cold eyes lies a soul that has lived deeply enough to understand. The truest light can sometimes only be seen in the dark. So, if you've ever felt misunderstood for being different, remember the woman with the ice blue eyes, the one who made Hollywood look away, yet made cinema remember forever. And perhaps after hearing her story, you might ask yourself, how many times in your own life have you turned away from someone simply because they didn't fit the crowd? If Meg Foster's story touched your heart, share your thoughts below. Because maybe, through your words, her journey will come alive once more in the hearts of today's viewers. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and stay with us as we continue to tell the stories of those rare souls who dared to live truthfully, even when it meant stepping away from the light.